Good. I'd like to welcome everybody here for a very special class. These are my legendaries, Brian Proctor.
Well, hello, everybody.
Say hello to Brian Proctor. Brian, say hello to all the legendaries I have in my world.
Hi,
It is
Brian.
great to be here.
Today is a great day. Today is a great day. So I'm going to ask you folks to mute yourselves, but we will have a Q&A toward the end. I just want to make sure that we have a really clear way to hear Brian in this very fascinating interview. And this is going to be about the book that he recently released called My Father Knew the Secret. And I've put the URL there in the chat. And yes, if you already own the book, you are already a very fortunate soul, because I'll tell you, I reread the book again this weekend and I was making all my notes. So I just really, you've just done such a spectacular job and such a beautiful memory to Bob. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Thanks.
So welcome, Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, doing really good. Enjoying a beautiful summer sunny day here.
Yeah, we both are up in the Northwest now.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Brian and I were talking before the class, and I was trying to remember when we first met. And because we've kind of been in each other's stratosphere since way back when. And we really don't have a pinpoint, but I do remember seeing Brian around in the mid 90s, late 90s. And then you got more and more involved in Bob's business. And so started to see a lot more of you then. But what a pleasure it has been to have you in my world. Now, for all of you who are studying Mojo Money Mastery over the next 5 weeks, last week we started with week 1, right? And I just want to tell you what a parallel Brian's book is to what we're teaching in Money Mojo Mastery. So as an example, last week we were talking about what are you thinking, right? Getting conscious to the negative money thought patterns that burble up pretty much all day long. And then actively noticing, purging, and replacing with more positive thought patterns. This is what we've all done from week 1, right? Now, Brian, you addressed all of this on choosing your thoughts, page 59 for you folks who have his book. The fact that you can't hold 2 thoughts at the same time, page 131, getting out of the scarcity trap, page 60, and then actual ideas in your forgiveness chapter, which started on page 84, that you saw in play with your dad, tools he used to replace a negative thought with a positive thought. So I love what your book really talks to is clearing those limiting thought patterns, those limiting beliefs, and really beginning to understand who we are and whose we are. I think you've done such a beautiful job with that.
Wow,
so in order to kind of get started here, I wanted to ask you a question first. Being around your dad and having him do everything that he did, when did you really have discussions about money in your family? Or did you ever?
Yeah, we always did. We had, as far back as I can really remember, when I was a child, he would always talk about money. I remember one of the first things that really comes to my mind is he was always of the opinion that money will flow to us when we're open to it. And he says we have to live the way we want to live. We have to act the way we want to live. And as a young child, I went on trips with him, and sometimes he'd take me on the road and during summer when I was off of school, and we always flew first class. And that was probably one of the first times he actually kind of taught me in a way. He always said to me, he says, Brian, you always want to fly first class. He says, it costs a little bit more, but you get taken care of. It just feels good. And he says, it's a feeling. And when you can get into that feeling, you will attract things into your life. And I remember that as a little kid. Now, when did I start putting it into real use? I was probably in my 20s when I really started to earn, really good money. But, I certainly started learning as a child. And he always talked about it in a good way, just that money was really an instrument just to be used to live more comfortably. He was never one to say money will make you happier or any of that kind of stuff. He just says it'll make you more comfortable. And he says it will enable you to do more in your life. And I think that was a great thing. I look at my father and I think boy, especially his last few years that he was here, he was earning some very significant income. And Di, you probably know, I mean, my father, he was giving away money as quickly as he earned it.
Mhm.
Anybody that really knows my father knows how generous he was. And if you were to ask what you think of Bob Proctor, if you really knew him, one of the first words that comes out of people's mouth is how generous he was. And he would help organizations, people. He did so much good with the money that he earned. He didn't hoard it to himself. He was always of the opinion that money comes and flows through us. And the more you give away, the more you're going to earn. That was his way of living. And he really lived that way. So it was a great lesson. It was a great thing to see. But more importantly for me, it was wonderful to see how he helped people and organizations do more because of what he was doing. It was a gift.
Right, absolutely. You know, we're actually getting into that next week in our class. We're going to be talking about tithing and giving and receiving as well, understanding the cycle and the circulation of money as energy.
Yeah.
So what kind of things did you participate in as a child or as a teen in giving money, in sharing?
Yeah, you know, when you say tithing, I haven't heard that word in a while. Although I know it's a common word. I do remember he always talked about that even as a child, that we need to give a portion of what we earn to charity, to something good, something of value. And when I was a child, it was always like 10% of whatever we had received. That was just, I guess, what he was taught. And I can remember when we get allowance, myself, my brother, my sister, I don't know how much it was. It wasn't a lot, but whenever we got an allowance, we always had to keep a portion of it to do something with, to give away, to do. We could donate it somewhere. We could do whatever. It was our choice what we could do with it. And so that was one of the foundational things that he kind of taught right when I was a young child. I never wrote about that, but you're kind of bringing it up, makes me remember that. And that was always important to him. You know, even back in days when he wasn't earning a lot of money, he was still super generous with whatever he did earn.
Yes, it's so interesting. One of the funniest lessons I ever learned from Bob was when when he would be in LA visiting, I'd always drive up and we'd have meetings in the hotel lobby and we'd talk and, then we'd go to dinner or something. And one time I was having the car pulled up for the valet and I had my $2 out to tip the valet. And he looked down and he goes, "Di, what is that in your hand?" And I was like, "It's my tip for the valet." And he's like, "Give that to me." That's so embarrassing. He like stuffs it into his pocket. He's like, "Di, the least you want to do is a $10 tip to these gentlemen."
Yeah, he was always big on the tipping, really big on the tipping. And
yeah, it was really a great lesson because, and you feel so good when you give that kind of money away, no matter what the service is, or no matter you're making their day and they remember it. I tell my people that, whenever we would have these class, the big events that Bob had, especially in the later years, you guys used to tell me that the hotels loved the Bob Proctor people coming in because everyone was so generous with the tips and the housekeeping and the valet and the bell stand and everything. It was just a higher vibration of really.
Well, he was big on that. He says, you tip somebody a little larger than normal, and you can change their day. I think back to, it was probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe. We were having Christmas. We were living in Florida at the time, and Dad and Linda came down, and they had rented a house right around the corner from us for a month, so that we could really have good visits and spend Christmas together. And I remember for the Christmas dinner, I bought a whole bunch of pies. There was this place that made pies around the corner from us that were just incredible pies. And these people were just getting by, and they were selling their pies for, I don't know, $20 or something. So I can't imagine they were making a whole heck of a lot. And I picked up, I think it was 5 pies. And so I paid them for the pies. And then I tipped this girl a $100 bill. And she started crying. She hugged me and she started crying. And she said, "You have no idea what a difference this will make for our Christmas." And it just came natural because that's what I learned from Dad. And the nicest thing, and I think what really drove it home for me, was we were sitting around dinner and I told Dad about this, about the girl crying and hugging me and all that. Well, Dad started crying. And he was just so touched that I think that I got the lesson that he's always been teaching. And the fact that I was actually doing what he did really touched him in a neat way. And that just, for me, drove it home.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that story. One of the other things I love in your book is, addressing the limiting thought patterns that so many people have, and a lot of that has to do with tithing or giving of money because you think, well, I can't really give this away, and Bob always taught me that, it's God's money. It's just energy. And it was such a way to move me past that feeling that I had to hold on and I had to, save and scrimp and do all that kind of thing. It was such a big shift for me in my consciousness, my prosperity consciousness. And when you look at these limiting thought patterns, it extends to every aspect of your life. And I know when you were talking about getting into real estate, you got into real estate in your early 20s. You said around 1987, 1988. And I was trying to figure out when I knew that I had seen you at a Craig Proctor event when I was his marketing director. And I had started with him in 95 through about 99, 2000-ish. I was his marketing director. And I think that's when I first saw you. But, what's so interesting in real estate is, I got my real estate license in California, because I had a lot of referrals coming in through my Best of Laguna Beach thing. What's interesting is that people have this idea that when you get into real estate, you've got to start at the bottom and you've got to really hustle and it's hard work and you barely make any money. And I'd love to have you tell the story about how you walked into real estate with a different attitude and decided that limiting thought pattern wasn't going to affect you.
Yeah. When I got into real estate, I was 26 years old. I just turned 26. And everybody around me was all, you're too young to be selling houses to people that are worth, whatever the amount was. You'll never do well. It was, that was all the stuff you hear. And I remember Dad, he said to me right from the get-go, he says, Brian, act as if, that was always a big part of his thing. Act as if you are the most successful real estate agent in the city. Nobody needs to know that this is your first deal. If you treat these people properly and you act in their best interest and you just be the best agent you can be, you're going to do great. And I took that to heart and I got in, and I'll never forget some of the office meetings. I had some people there that were amazed. My first year in the business, I earned a little over $400,000. And that was a lot of money back in the 80s, especially for a 26-year-old. And I know the first clients I ever dealt with, they would have never known that they were my first clients because I acted as if I was that agent. And even if I wasn't in the very beginning, I became that very quickly because that was my mentality. And that's something that Dad always drove home. We can let outside people and outside circumstances control us if we let it, but we can also alter that by just the way we think. And I know whenever I had doubts, I acknowledged it, but then I kicked them out of the way. Like you said earlier, you can only hold two images in your mind or one image in your mind at the same time. So you might as well make it a good one. And if you have a bad one, be aware that you're having a bad one and get rid of it and replace it with a good one, no matter what's going on in your world. And when I started in real estate, I'll tell you, Dad always talks about his income thing. The most I had ever earned before was $18,000 in a year. And my first month in real estate, I earned $40,000. And then it just kept going. And I just, for me, found a vehicle that I could go out, be of service, and earn a great income. And I earned more income with more people I could help. that was kind of the cool thing with real estate. The more people I could help find their dream home or sell their house, resolve problems, or whatever that was, the more people I could help, the more money I earned. And it was just a great thing. It was a good learning experience.
I love how you talk to the service of it, because it really is about the service. I mean, Earl Nightingale, Lead the Field, all of that talks to the fact that the way that you're going to make money the fastest is by increasing your service, right? Yeah. Figuring out how to do that. And that is the key. It's the law of cause and effect, really, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I never counted my commissions. I never worried about it. I just knew that if I helped enough people, I would do well. And one of the things I remember doing, and this was a great lesson, is, every once in a while, I can remember I'd be in a bit of a slump and I wasn't selling houses. And for me, it was just the doing of the deals, that mental keeping busy, doing, action steps. And when I was in a bit of a slump, I would put an ad in the newspaper that if you're looking for a house to rent, I can help you. Because at that time, renters were having trouble finding places. And I would do rental deals, which paid peanuts. You'd get half of a month's rent as your commission. But I would have so many people calling me because they were struggling finding rentals. And then, boof, I'd start doing 2, 3, 4 deals a day, rentals. But what it was doing was getting me back into the mindset of doing deals. And then once I was back in that mindset, I started selling houses like crazy again. And so, we need to do whatever we can do to trigger our mind into believing what we want to be real. And for me, that was just, at that time, was doing deals. And it didn't matter what the commission was. If I was doing deals, I knew I was going to be fine.
Yeah, that is a great concept. It reminds me of that billionaire story that I've told my class before about the guy who was the billionaire who lost all of his money, or he was a millionaire, lost all of his money, and then built it to billions. And he said, the thing that I did is I didn't stop doing what my paradigm was accustomed to doing.
Right.
He said, I may have done it in a smaller, like I didn't go to the Michelin-starred restaurant. I went to the hamburger joint, but I was still going out 3 or 4 nights a week because my paradigm was accustomed to that action and that activity. And it's almost like faking out your brain, faking out your mind.
Yeah. That is exactly, really, that's what it is. I mean, Dad always said it's act as if.
Right.
And, sometimes you just have to, that song, Pretend. He loved that song, Pretend. Sometimes you have to pretend. And that's okay. Now, where it can be its biggest struggle is those closest to us. So, everybody, you want to give some thought to where you want to be and what you want to be in this world. And sometimes you have to pretend to be that person. Well, the people closest to us are the ones that can take us off track quicker than anybody, unfortunately. They'll look at you like, that's not you. What are you doing? And they'll cut you down. And we need to find ways to just push that aside and carry on. And sometimes, your naysayers, they can be family members. They can be people close to you. You might not want to spend quite as much time around those people during that period of time. Not to say you don't want to be with them, but you want to really selectively pick who you're going to surround yourself with, especially when you're changing who you are. Because when you change who you are, you're also causing other people to have to change the way they look at you. And we don't like to be changed. And so when you're changing, you're causing somebody else to change. And nobody wants to be changed. So you need to keep that in mind. So when you're being this new person, this new business owner, whatever that may be, just recognize that. When you get the naysayers, just say, hey, that's great. Thanks for your thoughts. And then just carry on and don't let it take over your head.
That reminds me of one of my favorite sentences in your book. It was actually in chapter 8 of Act As If. Chapter 8, I think, was called Mindset. But you said freedom comes when we stop being what other people think we should be and start acting like the person we want to be.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, I'm lucky. I know I'm lucky. And I learned that from a young age. But it's not to say that I still don't have people close to me. I remember, I won't specifically say who, but I had family members say, Brian, why are you doing that? That's crazy. You shouldn't be doing that. Especially at this stage of your life, you should be a little more conservative. And I smiled, and, I didn't disagree, because what's the point? They're just going to then try to drive their point further. And I went ahead and did what I knew I needed to do to better myself. And everything I went after happened. Well, now they look at me like, wow, of course you could do that, and it's funny how people will respond differently. But if you forge the way you want to live, you will change other people's view of you, and that's okay. And eventually they'll come around to it, or they won't. And if they don't, that's okay too. The key is to live our life the way we want to live. Dad always says, none of our business what others think of us. And quite frankly, most people don't think about us very much. They do when they're with us, maybe for a short period of time, but after that, they're not. So
they're worried about thinking about themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it really
they've got
doesn't
their
matter.
own selves to think about.
Right. So, I've always been of the opinion, you got to step out and do what you want to do, and don't do it based on what others think. Again, I've been taught that since a young age. It's easy for me to say and do because I have learned that. I'm not saying that's easy for everybody to do, but I do believe with awareness, and I think everybody on this call has this awareness now that with that awareness, it is easier to do. And when those negative feelings or thoughts come into your head, I think you recognize it quicker, and you're able to alter that and kick that out and start focusing on what it is that you do want.
Yeah, there was a point in the book when you were talking about, struggling with the decision, struggling with the limiting thought patterns. And your dad would say, what are your limiting beliefs on this decision? Why are you holding on to those beliefs? And what can you do to change them? Right?
Yeah. So, sorry. Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah. He would have me analyze what was holding me back. And, those limiting beliefs, I'll tell you how they show themselves easily. When you set a goal, Dad was always about setting a goal that you don't have a clue how to get to. And it's important that you set goals like that, because when you set a goal that you're going after that you don't have a clue how you're going to achieve it, it's going to cause you to do things that you would never normally do. If you set a goal that you figure if you do this and do that, you'll get there, there's no inspiration in that. And so he would always have me set a goal that it would cause me to do the different things, the crazy things, whatever it was. And I've lost complete track on what the question was, because I went off on something else.
No, you haven't. You're leading right up to the thing I wanted to talk about.
Okay. All right.
So, when you talk about making a decision to go after the big C goal, the C goal that we talk about, right? You said that sometimes you would sit down with your dad to discuss it, which is always the worst thing to do when you want to be talked out of going after your C goal. And I know that too, because like you said in your book, when you sat down with your dad to talk about a big decision you're going after, you basically are waiting for him to just go poof.
Right. Yeah. So now you just brought me back. So it's those limiting beliefs. So
exactly.
When you set a big goal, or your dream of something really big that you don't have a clue how you're going to do, that's when the limiting beliefs will enter your head. You'll think, who am I to think I should have this? Or, what would other people think if I did this? Those are the limiting beliefs. And once we can recognize what that is, then let's think, what is the opposite to that? I do deserve this. I do deserve to live this way. Take that. If you ever want to discover what your limiting beliefs are, think of something really big that you don't have a clue how you're going to get to, but something that'd be like, boy, I really would like that. And then the I can't ideas come into your head. Those are your limiting beliefs. So once you start getting those I can't ideas, maybe even write them down. Write down what's holding you back. Well, then on that same piece of paper, write down the opposite. What is the opposite of that negative belief? And then maybe then you have something that you could write an affirmation around, whatever it may be, that you can start to focus on the other side of it, and that'll get you past those negative limiting beliefs.
You know, one of the things that I really liked that you addressed in the book as well was talking about the past being the past. And you made a really good point about the old you, you know, because when you have a really big goal, especially when it comes to something that has to have financial support in order to happen in your world, a lot of times your limiting belief pattern will come up, what I call the paradigm going up the elevator into your filing cabinet of your mind. And it says, well, you tried that before and you failed,
Mhm.
you know, or, you know, you thought that before and you didn't get very far, you know, and you had a good way of bringing back your dad's, you know, his comments to you about that. You know, whatever has happened in the past is past. The only place the past exists is in your mind. It's no longer happening to you right now. You know,
Yeah,
don't keep it alive because it's not serving you. I think that that is so important for people to understand, because you've got to drop the past and move into the opportunity, right?
you totally do. You know, he had a great phrase. I loved when he said it. He said, "You cannot change the time you got out of bed this morning." And it is what it is. Whatever time you got out of bed is the time you got out of bed. And, you know, that is it. What's happened in our past has happened in the past, good or bad. And I see so many people that have these loops in their head. Well, I've tried that. I've done that. You know, I can't do that, or whatever that may. And they're hanging on to these past stories that are running in loop in their brain.
Mhm.
And, you know, Dad was always of the opinion that if you want to live your best life, you need to live in the present moment. And the past, if you live in the past, it's just going to have you know, you may live in regret. You might be that, you know, that high school person that was you know, for a guy that was maybe the quarterback in high school, and that was his big moment in life. And you hang on to just that. When you could be so much more if you let go of the past. So good or bad, let it go. And he always said the future, again, is ahead of us. It's not the here and now. And so many people that are apprehensive about the future get worried about it. They get anxious. You create inner turmoil. But if you live in the present moment and do the best you can in the present moment, your life will never be the same. You know, Dad always said a pro is at their best regardless. And
Mhm.
that is by living in the present moment and being the best version of yourself in the present moment. How can you be the best you right now? And do it and be in the present moment. I promise you, if you live in the present and be the best version of you at all times, you won't have worry, you won't have fear, because you only have the now, and you're actually taking action in the now. Your life will never be the same. I promise you that.
I love that. Okay, so let me apply that to some of the big examples that you gave in the book. Okay. So you say, you know, you're living in the present and you're acting in the present. Now, one of the things that I loved about Bob's teaching over many other teachers out there who are wonderful teachers is that he was really about taking the action. Whatever action you know to take, do something to keep it moving forward. So when you're dealing with your limiting beliefs, but you've decided that this is going to be the thing, like for instance, when you sat down with him and told him that you wanted to buy this house in Florida, or you wanted to fix up the place in Puget Sound, right? When you look at either one of those stories, even the beautiful car that you purchased, you know, that you wanted, that you didn't quite have enough money for. So how does someone, like, we're in a money mojo class. There are people here who have big, big goals, and they're thinking, I don't even know how I could start to make this thing happen. So for instance, one of my clients here in the call has her eye on a big, beautiful place in Florida, and she wasn't even allowed to go see it because the real estate agent, the listing agent required, you know, proof of funds for the deposit
Wow.
before you were even allowed to go into the place. And
Uh-huh.
that happens in Laguna Beach as well.
Uh-huh.
So when you're looking at these kinds of decisions, what actions did you take when you said, okay, I'm going to do the Florida house. I don't know how. Okay, Corey and I, we're going to do Puget Sound. We don't know how. What kind of actions did you immediately start taking to start creating that reality?
So I just started doing things that would bring in more income.
Mhm.
And, you know, we all have the ability to earn more. And I will say this, even if you're in a job that pays you a salary, you have the ability to earn more. Especially today, the internet has brought so many things into our life, so many opportunities that, even if you're in a salaried job, you can start some kind of a side business on the internet. There's all kinds of programs out there that you could start Googling how to start a side business, and you'll come up with ideas. The key is to make it something that you're passionate about, something that you have an interest in. And knowing, and again, this is maybe my limiting belief, you might not earn a ton of money right away on it, but if you have a passion for it, you'll keep at it. And eventually you will. I know so many people that started a side business. Dad was always about MSIs, multiple sources of income. Mm-hmm. And I know so many people that started a side business that was earning less than what they were earning in their salary job. But within a year to 2 years, it was more than their salary job. So all of a sudden they were in this place that they didn't want their salary job anymore. They left it and they went full time on what their passion was, and their income continued to skyrocket. The key is to find, what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? How can you earn some more income? And even if it's an extra $20 a day by doing something, that action step will get you out. That $20 is just maybe $20, but maybe tomorrow it'll be 40, and maybe next week it'll be 100. Just what can you do in the present moment to bring in more income? When I was in real estate, my big thing was, what can I do today to make a deal happen today? Now, I didn't make a deal every day, but I acted as if, what can I do today to make a deal today? And I took action. Dad was always big on, our thoughts are very powerful, but with that, then we need to step out and take action in the world. And he said that was the big thing that was missing in the movie, The Secret. It talked about, think and your thought will become reality. Mm-hmm. Well, that's true, but with action, you need to step out and do something. And it comes back to living in the present moment. If you can live in that present moment, what can you do right now, right this moment, to earn an extra dollar or two, whatever that may be? And just, if you're building a business or starting a business, what can you do right now to make that business a little stronger, to reach more people? If you keep acting in the present moment and do the best you can, be the best version of yourself right now, you're going to get there. And, if there's a house you want in Florida and the agents aren't going to let you in yet until you can prove whatever, say, okay, great. I'm going to, my first goalpost is to come up with the amount of money that I need to have sitting there to prove that I can buy it. Whether that's just a deposit and you actually can't buy it yet is irrelevant. But to show that I've got the deposit. So at least then I can get in and see the house and start to feel it. And then my next step is to come up with a down payment. You can work it in steps. Don't let that first stumbling block stop you. Online, you can see everything in a home today, which is amazing. And from that stuff, you can build great vision boards. You can do all kinds of things that are going to really expand where you're at right now. Mm-hmm. So
talk about, like, for instance, I want to get back into the MSIs, because you said something there that was really important, that's something I stress as well, is to do something in your wheelhouse. If you want to earn more money and you're not comfortable with, like, say, network marketing, or you haven't been in that world before, is that something that you want to jump into for your MSI? Or can you jump into something that you're passionate about already, that you have some knowledge about already, right? And that helps you come up with more ideas on how to create that income in a faster way, I think. Sure.
Yeah. I think the key is, if there's something that you love, something you love to do, something you like to read, whatever it is, there's a way to create a business around it. And I can give you a real hard example. I started Inside of the Day, which was a program I started back in 2000. I think I talk about it in the book. Mm-hmm. And I always had a love for quotes and uplifting stories. And I know why that happened. Dad, when I was young, used to, I've got a whole bunch of them here. When I was young, he had these little bits and pieces, magazines, or I don't even know if you call it a magazine, a little booklet thing. And he always left them around the house. And I used to love reading these things. They just had inspirational quotes. They had short little stories. I just really enjoyed it. Well, back in 2000, I was working for my dad. I was selling seminars, and I didn't really enjoy selling seminars. It just wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't my thing. I wasn't having fun with it. And so I wanted to find another way to contribute, some other way to help the business. And that's when I came up with this Insight of the Day idea. And this was before quote of the day services were on the web. This was before the whole web server stuff where you could send out emails easily, Awebers and MailChimps and all that. None of that stuff existed in 2000. I had a passion for quotes and stories. I was technically inept. I had never owned a computer. I had never had an email address. But I knew that if I could deliver positive messages to our clients via email, because then there's no expense to it, I could stay in touch with our clients in a positive way. And to me, that felt good. And I knew there was something right about it. So I didn't have a clue how I was going to do it. And this is the important part of the lesson. I had to go out and buy a computer. I got myself an email address. And then I had to figure out, how am I going to send these emails? So I started sending them out one at a time. I started with a list of about 300 people, and I would send out these emails to people with the quotes and stories. Well, the people were loving it. And the feedback I got was tremendous. So I was always responding to people because that encouraged me as well as encouraged them. And I said, if you know other people who would like to receive this, please, let them know, and I'd be happy to add them to the list. Well, it hit a point where I was working 16-hour days doing crazy data entry, sending out messages. It was nuts, and there was no way I could keep it up, and there was no way I could scale it. Well, then I found a system, so I had to find a way. And again, this is all about just taking action. And I really like the phrase imperfect action. When I started this, it was imperfect action. I was blowing it. I was making all kinds of mistakes, but I knew I was doing something that was good and that was right, and that I felt would have success at some point. Mm-hmm. And so then I found a program that I could download into my computer, and I could email everybody all at once. It would just go bing, bang, bang, bang. Well, then my internet got shut down. My internet service provider thought I was spamming people because of the volume of emails I was starting to send. So I had to convince them that, no, these are people that are opting on. And so I got through that. It took me about 2 weeks. I got through it. And then I just found another way. Well, eventually, these web servers and everything came into place, and I could start setting up the messages a month in advance, and they would just go out automatically. But it took me a few years to figure all that out. This didn't happen in a week or 2 weeks. Right. This was a few years. But after maybe 2 or 3 months of this contact, and with a very small list, I thought, okay, I'm going to try and sell a program that I know will help the people that are on this list. One of my father's programs. It was a simple booklet and a CD. It was like a $19 product. Well, I think the list was maybe around 500 people, and I think I sold 20 programs. And I thought, wow, you know what? I'm onto something here. This is right. I was being of service, so it felt good. And it took me probably 5 years before it started to earn good money. And, by the time I'm not with it any longer, I'm on my own now, but by the time I left, it became a multi-million-dollar business. And it happened because I took imperfect action. Mm-hmm. I knew I had a passion for this. I knew there was value in it. That's the key. And I knew it was of service. I think, there's lots of things we can do that probably are not of service, but I think if you're studying this kind of material, if you're in service, you've got something good. Just get out there and start doing it, and do the best you can today, even if you goof it up. I made so many errors. If I had known what I had to do to make it what it was, I probably wouldn't have done it. Right. And that's the honest answer. So I think most people that you see that really have great things, that do great things, They've just stepped into it and they've just figured their way through it. And if they knew what they had to do, they probably wouldn't have done it. But boy, I thank God I did do it. And the things I learned on the way and how it changed. It changed my father's company for sure. We were, when The Secret came out in 2006, we were one of the only companies that was set to capture email addresses and stay in touch with people. Nobody else was. And because of that, it elevated our business in such a huge way. And that was all because of a silly idea. Well, it wasn't silly, but that I had it, in around the year 2000. So my lesson in this ramble is that if you have a passion for something and you want to do something, but you don't know how to do it, doesn't matter. Step into it and just start doing it. I promise you'll find something that will be fun, you'll enjoy. And if you enjoy it and you keep at it, it will eventually bring you the income that you're looking for. And it'll get you that house in Florida you want. It'll do whatever it is you want. The key is to stay focused on the good and don't let the nonsense kick you out of the way. There was so much nonsense that could have made me stop and say, oh God, I can't do this anymore. This is ridiculous. And I've quit. And I'm glad I didn't, because what I learned and what came out of it was so much bigger than I even thought in the beginning.
Indeed. I was actually going to ask you how many times you thought about quitting.
Quite a few times. Yeah, quite a few times. But I was committed. And that's the thing. That was always about, if you make a committed decision and do the best you can, it will work out. And when it doesn't work out and you quit and you go to something else, that's okay if it didn't work out for good reason. But if it didn't work out because you just didn't figure it out yet, well, then, maybe give some thought to what that is. And he was always if you make a committed decision, you will do whatever it takes to make it happen. And that's it.
And I believe too, that when you talked about, if it doesn't work out, the thing is that there was a reason why you moved forward on that particular path. And there are lessons to be learned from that particular path. And as you also noted, the Steve Jobs quote that your dad loved so much was that looking back, you can see how the dots connected, even on what something looked like as a failure or something that you moved past or beyond. You still had that as a building block somewhere along the way. I remember talking with you back in 2000, 2001, because I think at that time we were building Bob's website, because, the internet was finally doing things with websites and such. And you called me and we were talking about it because you seriously were working so many hours, unsubscribing people, subscribing people, one by one, Yeah. And you were a little frustrated. But how many people ended up in the insights list before you turned that over to PGI? How many people did you have in there?
It was hundreds and hundreds of thousands, maybe a little over 1 million. It was a lot.
And what happened is Brian ended up being one of the forefront people of what we call a super affiliate, who, people came to him and said, hey, I would love to have you market this product with me in a joint venture, and so he was able to give more visibility to other programs and other people, and they had a channel through which they could go, and so it was absolutely phenomenal. So, the PGI company, they made money, the people on the other side made money, and it was really fantastic to see this little idea from just the little books that Bob left laying around when Brian was a child, and how that turned into this empire. Really, Brian is really one of the most respected super affiliates in the world. So, it's pretty amazing. I remember once I sent you a Christmas letter about my dog Merlin dying, and you called me and said, I want to put this in the Insights Friday story. I was like, okay. And I got thousands of emails from people talking about, how they identified with it. And they told me their dead dog stories and their dead cat stories and all of this. It was just so lovely. It was amazing.
Yeah.
No, I want to go ahead.
I want to read one thing out of this book, if that's okay.
Oh, sure. Yes.
So, and the only reason I wrote the book, so I should know everything in it. I would just want to make sure I have the words exactly right. There's a quote that I put in here, and I think everybody can relate to this. And this is something Dad used all the time. We had a a comedian come out to one of our seminars a number of years ago. His name is Kyle Cease. And he made a statement in this seminar that resonated so strongly with me. I remember it resonated really strongly with Dad. He said, where is it? When wrestling with a decision, you can only measure what you are giving up. You cannot measure what you will gain. We have no idea what the future gain will be when we wrestle with a new decision. It's easy to think about what you're going to give up. You know, I got to give up my mornings with this or my evenings on and that because I'm starting something on the side. I maybe have to give up binge watching Netflix for a little bit. I mean, but some of these things that we're giving up are so ingrained into a part of our daily life that it can be tough to give up some of these things. And you always know what you're giving up. You never know what you're going to gain. And you won't know until you step into it and start. But I challenge you to give up some of the nonsense in life and start taking action towards what it is you really want. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but even if it's just 15, 20 minutes a day, an hour a day, that adds up big time over a period of time. And you're going to get something. Like when I started writing this book, I just wrote it a little bit every morning. And I never got overwhelmed by it. When I was struggling with what should I write and what story should I tell, and I was kind of hitting, writer's block, I guess they call it. Corey, my wife, she said to me, she says, Brian, why don't you just go up there first thing in the morning to your office and write 500 words? That's it. Just 500 words. And then do whatever the heck you want to do for the rest of the day. And I thought, well, that's easy to do. I could write 500 words pretty quickly. So I never let the project overwhelm me. And I just wrote 500 words and then I would go off and do whatever I wanted to do. And before I knew it, I had a book. And then we spent a year editing it and really making it better. My wife helped me tremendously with that, really bringing color to it. And, because we took that time, and it wasn't a lot of time, it was just a little bit of time each day, I feel it gave us a great product, so it doesn't require a lot of your time, but boy, if you do a little time and you do it consistently, you'll end up with something. And 2 years, 3 years down the road, it's going to be 2 or 3 years down the road, no matter what you do. So why not do a little bit of something every day and then see where you're going to be at 2 or 3 years down the road? It can be pretty amazing and it's pretty eye-opening. I look at all the things I've accomplished in my life, and it's all because I did the little things every day, consistency. And I look at some of the big things I've accomplished, and they don't seem so big anymore. And I know they're really big to some people, and they're probably really small to other people. It's really all relative. But anything I've achieved is just because I just did a little bit every day in the here and now.
I want to ask you by the way, that quote you mentioned by Kyle, I actually had in my notes here because I also had your statement after that said, unfortunately, that unknown is what keeps us stuck where we are, even if we're unhappy. Staying stuck means we know what to expect. So we stay there because change can feel scary and we can't measure the gain of what the change could bring. And I mean, if you listen to Brian talking here, he wasn't able to measure the gain of what insights was going to bring, of what showing up on his first day of real estate, acting as if he was a top agent was going to bring. You can't name that. You can't look in that future, crystal ball. But the key is to not allow yourself to stay stuck where you're potentially not as happy as you could be, not as fulfilled as you could be, not as in great service as you could be. One of the things, I know we're getting close on time and I want to open this up for some questions, but I want to ask you just one more thing. You talked about perception and perspective, and you talked about how your dad would refer to the mental faculties so that when it was time to change your perspective on something, as in buying the house in Florida, as in, the Puget Sound, as in getting the car of your dreams, can you talk just a little bit about that, about what it meant to you to change your perception or your perspective on a potential thing that looked so big?
Yeah, it's the big thing that he always taught me was that it's neither big or small, it's just how you look at it. And what's big for one person is small for another person. And the key is just being aware of that. It really is. And, if you want this big house in Florida, or you want a yacht, or you want a business that is serving thousands of people, whatever that may be, if it's big, that's okay. But look at it from the other point. Picture as it being a small deal. It's not that big. And what would somebody like, I think you've had Bruce Payetta on here, right? Bruce is a great guy, and Bruce is forever making deals. And, he doesn't look at them as big or small much anymore. He just sees them as another deal, and he steps into it. We just need to be able to look at things from another angle. One of the chapters I wrote, it's called Living with Rose-Colored Glasses. And this was something that I always learned from Dad, that I look at everything in my world through rose-colored glasses. I always look for the positive, and it drives some people crazy. That's okay. It's because some people are negative. I don't know what kind of glasses they're looking through, but I don't want to see them. I always look for the good in things. And so we're going for something big. Let's look for the good in it. And how can we get there? Don't focus on how we can't get there. Don't focus on what's going to block us and stop us. If something's in our way, yes, there's legitimate roadblocks. I'm not going to say that there's not roadblocks to get to where we want to go, but what can we do to step over that roadblock? And we don't need to have the path all the way to the end. All we need to do is the path to get past this first roadblock. What can we do to get past that? Once we get past that, I promise you're going to run into another one. And that's okay. How are you going to get past that? And when you have the negative naysayers, you have people, you're crazy to do this, or why would you even try? You just look at them and smile and say, it's just something I've got to do. And just focus on the positive. And when somebody says something bad, turn around and think of the good around it. He always had me focus on the good, even in bad times and bad things. I'm not to say that I haven't had bad things happen to me in my life. I definitely have, but I don't live on those memories. I don't harbor those memories. I don't let them form a part of my identity. I focus on the good and the good that came out of it and where I am now because of the choices I've made. We are where we are because of choices we made, good or bad. And we are going to be wherever we're going to be because of choices we made. So all we have control over now is where are we going to be? And if we make good choices, positive choices, look for the good, we're going to be a lot further than we ever thought we would be because we're taking conscious action to the good.
Beautiful. I love this. We could go on for hours.